Imagine an absolute freak accident being presented to the courts.
Hey Masana, so I think it's only fair that we start with a family meeting before the video continues. First of all, thank you to all 255 of you guys for sticking with me even though I'd abandoned my channel. Crazy business, I tell you. But yeah guys, so I've decided to change the type of content that I'm doing because I think I've thought things through a bit better this time. Putting my foot in the water helped me understand what actually goes into YouTube and the areas that I need to improve on. So what we're going to do this time is tell case law, right? The stories of case law, the stories that shape how our legal system functions, and I hope you guys are going to find valuable entertainment with this. And more than that, I will try my best to commit to YouTube and show up as much as I can this year, as well as improve, as much as I can. But I am going to take it easy on myself. I don't want to put pressure on myself and end up turning this into an unpleasant, nerve-wracking experience. So even with you guys, I'm gonna ask that you be gentle with me. Not that you guys have ever been, unfriendly, but yeah, please be gentle with me and let's grow together. All right, enjoy the video.
Enter Fernandez and his friend. So these two guys, weird as it is, kept a baboon. Fernandez is in a business partnership and himself as well as this person are running a vegetable shop that also sells other things for a living. So they thought it was a great idea to have a baboon adjacent to the very shop where their customers come in and purchase vegetables. So in the yard, Fernandez and the friend kept a baboon in a cage, or a cage-like structure as it's described. Now, this cage-like structure was very problematic because the baboon often escaped due to the cage not being very steady and safe. And one morning when Fernandez came to the shop, he realized that the baboon was outside of the cage. Upon inspection, Fernandez realized that there was an opening in the cage that the baboon could easily walk in and out of at will, but he had not noticed this until this point. Naturally, Fernandez grabs a revolver, points it at the animal, and then manages to have the animal go back inside the cage. He then proceeds to repair the cage with the assistance of what's written as a bantu. So now, I didn't understand there whether they meant like the person's name was Bantu or he was a Bantu person. Because remember back then, it was during the time of that very not cute regime that the country had. So it would have been okay, I'm assuming at the time, to write things like that and not give people a name. And as if trying to sucker punch Fernandez's efforts, this baboon proceeds to escape through the very same hole that Fernandez had left unsupported in an attempt to fix it. This time, the animal really goes in and does something diabolical. It runs into the streets, grabs the baby from the mother's pram, and then bites the baby on the back of the head. At this point, Fernandez again pulls out his revolver, shoots into the air, and then the animal becomes startled, throws the baby on the ground, and then runs back inside its cage. Of course, due to this vicious attack, the baby ended up losing her life. So somebody must be held to account. Right, so now we're gonna fast forward to the part where Fernandez is in court trying to appeal against a culpable homicide charge. At this point, he's charged, but he's trying to fight for his life here. Guys, please thumbs up if you're still watching. So the first legal question that the court then has to answer is whether Fernandez is criminally liable for homicide. The actions of his baboon, can they be held against him? Because at the end of the day, the court is not in the business of arresting animals. And the second question that was asked is, whether Fernandez acted negligently at the time of fixing the cage. So for the rule of law in this case, the court zoomed into other case law, because as you may or may not know, case law is a primary source of law in the country, meaning people can refer to it when they want certain legal principles to be understood. Right, so for the first rule of law, the court looked at the case of the state versus Bernardes. I don't know how to say his name correctly, but in essence, the principle there was that the appellant can only be held liable for the actions of the animal if the animal was actually in his custody or control at the time of the attack. Then they looked at the case of Robertson versus Boyce, which dealt with animals that are considered non-domestic. And in this case, it was established that owners of such animals that are non-domestic at all times must be presumed to be aware of the fact that their animals are very capable of being vicious, committing vicious acts, being vicious towards people and causing harm. If you go in and read the case, you will find that a number of other cases were mentioned, but I do believe these two represent some of the main. And then when we move on to the application, you'll realize that the court made use of a test called the reasonable person's test in order to try and establish whether Fernandez was actually negligent or not, right? So the way the reasonable person's test works is that the court asks the question, would a reasonable person in the position of the appellant or the accused have foreseen danger? Would they have acted differently, and would they have tried to prevent the situation that has everybody sitting in court today? And so of course, one of the first answers was that a reasonable person in the position of Fernandez would have foreseen that the baboon was in fact going to attack somebody should it run loose. And then they went on to say that he was very aware of this because whenever he handled the baboon, he had a gun with him, right? The second behavior that the court observed on the part of Fernandez was that he actually had a sign where the baboon is on its cage saying, listen, don't interact with the baboon, don't play with the baboon. And apparently this was because the baboon had previously hurt the face of a child who was trying to fidget and play around with it. The court also said that a reasonable person would also constantly ensure that the cage is in a good position. It's in a suitable state to keep this wild animal that is in such proximity with people. So then the court went on to find that Fernandez did in fact behave negligently and that he did not deserve to have his sentence removed. So they continued to find him guilty of culpable homicide.